The time now 11:01 on the East Coast and 8:01 on the West Coast. We are gathering the latest information here on a situation developing out of Germany. You can see the map right there on your screen, and some of the viewer video will pop up in just a second. But the death toll rising to 5, with more than 200 people injured at this point after a vehicle crashed into a crowd here at a Christmas market. Again, this is over in Germany. I do want to bring in a guest to discuss this a little bit further. Jonathan Schanzer is the executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and help discuss this a little bit further.
My pleasure.
All right, so first off, I want to talk about the attack itself, because investigators were quick to say this was an attack, and they haven't necessarily called it a terror attack, but by saying it's an attack, is that what they're saying?
I think so. I mean, I think the motivations of this are still unclear. I mean, it's a very bizarre way that this has been reported. We're hearing that this is a Saudi individual, about 50 years old, and the assumption then would be that this is an Islamist motivated attack. However, what we're also hearing is that this individual may have been a devout opponent of Islamism or of Islam, which then raises questions: why is he driving his car through the middle of a Christmas market if his primary motivation is anti-Islam? So I think right now, I think it's safe to say we've got more questions than answers, but this does appear to be ideologically or religiously motivated. But exactly what is motivating this individual has not yet been made clear. He is in custody with the German authorities. I am sure right now they're trying to learn a little bit more about what's going on. By the way, I think we should also note that there may have been an extradition request for him by the Saudi government, and that in and of itself is bizarre as well.
Are we seeing more terror-type attacks that are happening in Germany and in Europe overall? I feel like we've reported on a lot of them recently. Does it appear that there is an uptick, or are we maybe just hearing about them more?
Well, I mean, you could go back to 2016. There was one attack like this in a German market back then. There was another one in France the same year. There have been stabbings. There have been attacks throughout Europe. I think what we can say about those, and I think it's really unclear right now whether we can connect this most recent attack to the previous ones, was that the Islamic State or Sunni jihadist radicals, if you will, were still carrying out attacks in the heart of Europe. That is, I think, at this point, hard to deny. The question is whether this is a continuation of that trend or whether this is motivated by something else entirely. Again, the reporting has been really odd so far about the motivations of this individual. Really runs counter to what I think a lot of people might have expected.
And you kind of mentioned this already, but this attack happening one day off from the 8-year anniversary of the Christmas market attack in Berlin, where, as you mentioned, an Islamic extremist plowed through the crowd with a truck, more than a dozen people killed. Do we know if there's the possibility of any kind of connection? Is that something that investigators will likely look into at this point?
Look, it's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear about a car driving through a Christmas market in Germany. You immediately go back to 8 years prior, almost to the day. I mean, I think it's undeniable that we have to make at least a connection in our minds. Now, whether this was designed to be a follow-on attack or, some kind of echo of what happened 8 years ago, I think remains to be seen. And again, it's just bizarre when we hear about this man being motivated by anti-Islamic ideology. So again, why are you seeing this person plow his car through a Christmas market if he's anti-Islam? Perhaps he's a devout atheist or a radical atheist. We just don't know right now. And I think the German investigators that are speaking to him, it's really upon them to hopefully come out with a statement soon that clarifies this. But I think, maybe to broaden out for a minute, we are now seeing the return of al-Qaeda in Syria. There is, of course, we see continued attacks by the United States against ISIS positions in Syria since the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime. We could see right now a reigniting, if you will, of this battle between the West and Sunni jihadi forces. But again, right now, we just don't know what motivated this this individual in Germany yesterday.
And you kind of already touched on this as well, but I want to get your take. Aside from the motive, the motivation here, are there other questions that you hope investigators will come out and answer? Because they held a press conference a short time ago, and it didn't seem like any new information was really provided. It was a lengthy newser, but yeah, not a lot of information. So what do you hope will be answered aside from maybe the motive and motivation?
Well, I mean, look, we know the tactics. We know what this person did. So there's not a lot of question there. Really, it is a question of whether there was an outstanding extradition request from the Saudi government that was ignored. I think that's an important question that German investigators are going to have to answer. The German government will have to answer. And then I think beyond that, it's what was that ideological motivation? What was it that caused this individual to go through there? Was there intelligence, by the way, about this person? Was he on the radar of German authorities out of concern for what he might do? These are, again, questions we just don't know, but we're going to have to answer, and hopefully soon, because you can see how this debate is shaping up. It's become very much an anti-immigration discussion in Germany, and that's, of course, spilling over here into the United States as well, talking about the need to close borders and the like. What's interesting, though, is that it does appear that this individual arrived in Germany legally. He's been there for, I think, the better part of 8 or 10 years. A professional. He's been described as a doctor. Doesn't seem to have been living there illegally. But again, I think we're now seeing a different dialogue, a different debate emerge as a result of this attack.
Any surprise that, and this is my last question for you, you have the NYPD, for instance, saying that while Christmas markets are big over in Germany, they're also big in New York. So they've kind of upped their patrols. Any surprise to see a large city, the largest city there in the U.S., doing something like that just in case? Or is that what you'd expect?
It's what I would expect. I mean, New York City is kind of the gold standard, and it needs to be, right? This is arguably the most important city for commerce in the United States. And they have a massive unit within NYPD, lots of connections out to the Department of Justice, to the FBI, to the CIA. Everyone is watching because New York has been targeted time and again by Al Qaeda, by ISIS, by the Taliban. So there is the need for vigilance. And of course, at this time of year, for whatever reason, this is the thing that ignites Islamist extremism. But again, I think we just need to note here that it may not have been. It seems almost obvious to me that it would have been, but we're hearing some very strange things out of Germany that do need to be clarified.
Yeah, a lot left to be clarified. Jonathan Schanzer, thank you so much, as always, for being here with us. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
No, I mean, I think other than just the fact that you have this very interesting debate emerging about immigration, you've got, questions about anti-Islam motivations, possibly Islamist motivations. I think it's just important that we not jump to conclusions just yet and let German investigators do their job.
Yeah, and hopefully, as I mentioned, we will get those answers. Thank you again, Jonathan, for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.